children. They express, they shout, they laugh like thunder, and cry like the sky just cracked open. They spin in circles in the middle of crowds. They ask questions without shame. They dance in silence, make sounds in public, and wear joy like its armor. They don't wonder if they're being watched. They are alive, utterly, unapologetically, fully alive. And then something happens, not all at once, but slowly. A child who once ran barefoot through the grass begins to walk a little quieter. They start whispering instead of speaking. They start hiding instead of showing. They hesitate before asking a question. They pause before laughing too loud. They become aware. Aware that their existence is being observed, judged, evaluated. What silences a child? It's not the loud rejection. Not always. Sometimes it's just the subtle glances, the quiet sighs from a parent, the teacher's annoyed tone, the friend who laughs at the wrong time, the adult who says, "Stop being so sensitive," or "Boys don't cry," or "Don't act weird in public," or "You're too much." A child doesn't understand society, but they understand pain. They don't know what shame means, but they feel it. And once that seed is planted, it grows. They stop doing the thing that brought them joy because it embarrassed someone else. They stop saying what's on their mind because someone told them they talk too much. They become silent. They become still. And people call it maturity. But sometimes it's not maturity. It's damage dressed as discipline. The world teaches you to hide yourself long before you understand who you really are. So the once loud, curious child becomes the quiet teenager who keeps their head down. Not because they want to, but because they've been trained to believe silence is safer. And maybe it is. Because what happens when you speak? Someone dismisses you. What happens when you cry? Someone mocks you. What happens when you share your dream? Someone tells you to be realistic. And so silence becomes the armor. And that armor grows heavier with every year. Soon you're not just quiet, you're distant. You're not just shy, you're invisible. And people look at you and say, "Oh, they're just introverted." But they don't see the war behind your silence. They don't see that being quiet was never a choice. It was a response, a survival mechanism. Because when the world makes you feel unsafe for being you, what do? You build a mask, a polite smile, a quiet nod, and "I'm fine," even when you're breaking. And you wear it for so long, you start to forget there was ever someone loud and free underneath. Some people think introversion is about personality, and sometimes it is. But for many, it's not about needing alone time. It's about feeling unseen in a room full of people. It's about remembering the time your voice shook when you tried to speak, and someone laughed. It's about protecting yourself from pain that felt too big to handle back then. So now you bury it beneath silence. Maybe you're that child. Maybe you're that adult now. People say you're quiet, reserved, mysterious, but they don't know that you used to be loud. You used to be open. You used to run into rooms like you owned the world. And then someone made you feel small. Someone told you your emotions were too much. Someone rewarded your silence and punished your expression. And that's when you learned being yourself comes with a cost. So you stopped. You turned inward. You became the person who observes instead of speaks, who writes instead of shares, who thinks too much and says too little. And the world, it applauds your composure. But no one sees the storm you've locked inside. Because underneath every quiet person is a history, a moment, a memory, a bruise that never got time to heal. They didn't become introverted. They were pushed into silence. The truth is, some introverts are just people who never felt safe being themselves, and silence became the shelter, the prison, the identity. But what if the silence was never who you were? What if it was who you had to become just to survive? They say time heals all wounds, but silence doesn't always mean healing. Sometimes it just means you've given up trying to explain your pain. You begin to live inside your mind. You play out conversations you never had. You rehearse words you'll never say. You cry alone in rooms where no one can hear. Not because you like the solitude, but because it's the only place you feel safe. You become the master of internal worlds. And on the outside, you seem calm, controlled, independent. But inside, there's a child still waiting to be seen. What breaks a person isn't always something big. Sometimes it's the thousands of small moments, the comments, the punishments, the cold shoulders, the emotional absence. It's being punished for who you are and praised for who you're not. So, you choose what feels safer. Don't speak unless spoken to. Don't share unless it's necessary. Don't feel unless you're alone. You become efficient at disappearing. And then the world labels you introvert, loner, antisocial. But none of those words tell the full story, because they don't talk about how introversion can be born from fear. Not the healthy kind, but the kind that teach you early on that your voice is dangerous, that your vulnerability is a liability. So you lock it all away, and that becomes your personality. But deep down, there's still that loud, curious child, buried but not dead, whispering still in your quiet moments. When the music is just right, when the art makes you feel something, when a friend looks you in the eye and says, "It's okay. You can be yourself here." Because being introverted doesn't mean you don't want to connect. It just means your trust is expensive. It was broken once, maybe more. And now, before you give it, you need to feel something real. Safety, warmth, understanding. But here's the tragedy. Most people never get to see that version of you. They see the quiet, the hesitation. They assume you're distant, when really you're just protecting something fragile. You've learned to read people before speaking, to scan for danger in a smile, to measure tone, body language, energy, all before you open your mouth. Because life taught you saying the wrong thing at the wrong time could cost you everything. So instead, you retreat. You find comfort in books, in films, in music, in thoughts no one else hears. You become rich on the inside, even if you feel poor on the outside. But sometimes it aches to hold so much and share so little. To be full of emotion and appear numb. To be dying for connection, but too afraid to reach out. This is the story no one sees. The brutal past that shaped an introvert. Not by choice, but by circumstance. You weren't born to hide. You were trained to. By moments that made you question your worth. By environments that made silence feel safer than truth. But you are not broken. You adapted. You survived in the only way you knew how. And now you're older. You've lived with this identity so long, it feels permanent. But deep within you, something is stirring. Maybe you've met someone who made you feel safe. Maybe you've heard a voice, a song that touched a part of you that had gone numb. Maybe you've caught yourself laughing freely, even if only for a second. And in that moment, you remembered, there's more to you. More than the silence, more than the armor. You can reclaim the parts of you that the world buried. Not all at once, but slowly. With compassion, with patience. You are not just an introvert. You are someone with layers. Someone who learned the hard way that the world isn't always kind to sensitivity, but still chooses to feel anyway. There is power in your silence, but there's also healing in your expression. You can speak again, laugh again, be seen, not just understood. Because the past may have shaped you, but it doesn't have to define you. And if you're listening to this somewhere quiet, somewhere private, somewhere safe, maybe it's time. Time to whisper a little louder, to let yourself be seen slowly, to forgive the world for what it did to you, without forgetting the strength it gave you. You survived, you adapted, and maybe now you're ready to live. Not as someone who hides, but as someone who remembers. Remembers who they were before the world told them to be quiet. But sometimes, remembering who you were hurts more than forgetting, because it reminds you of the gap between the child you once were and the adult you've become. A gap filled with silence, pain, retreat, and missed chances. You look at others who speak so freely, who light up rooms, who belong everywhere, and you wonder, why can't I be like that? But comparison is a cruel trick, because no one sees the war inside you. No one sees how much strength it takes just to show up, to smile, to say, I'm fine, when you're drowning in thoughts you don't even know how to put into words. It's not that you want to be alone all the time. It's just that for so long, being alone felt safer than being misunderstood. Because when you opened up before, you were told, you're too sensitive. You think too much. Why are you so quiet? So you buried your voice layer by layer, year after year, until silence became your comfort and your prison. But what if I told you your sensitivity isn't a flaw? It's a form of intelligence. Your depth isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Your solitude isn't isolation, it's introspection. You weren't made for small talk. You were made for soul talk. The kind of conversations that strip the ego, that heal wounds, that awaken something ancient and tender in the heart. And yes, this world may never understand the full depth of you, but that doesn't mean you need to shrink yourself for it. What if your quietness is exactly what someone else needs? What if your calm, your patience, your presence is the medicine to someone else's chaos? Because not every fire burns loud. Some flames glow silently, steady, warm, unshakable. Maybe that's you. Maybe you're not here to perform. Maybe you're here to witness, to hold space, to remind others and yourself that healing doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. You see, the world doesn't need more noise. It needs more meaning. And you, with all your scars, your silence, your deep internal life, you carry a meaning that was forged in pain, but softened into compassion. So don't curse your past. Don't regret the walls you built to protect yourself. They kept you safe. But now maybe it's time to start building windows. Let a little light in. Let a little out of you out. Not all at once, but one breath at a time. One word, one smile, one small act of courage. Because maybe, just maybe, the world isn't ready to hear your voice, but someone is. And maybe that someone is you.